Welcome to the program, Ted.
Glad to be here, Jeff.
It's a pleasure to have you here. But tell me, what do you have against information?
Well, I'll tell you a little story, Jeff, that illustrates the problem my book's addressed to. Not too long ago, a few years back, I was in my office at school, sharing an office with someone from the English department. And a student was talking with the professor about an assignment that had to do with a poem by Robert Frost. And I was vaguely aware of the conversation that was going on. And I heard my colleague saying to the student, I want you to try to draw all the information out of this poem. And she used that phrase several times. This was supposed to be the approach to the assignment. And when the student left, I asked her, what information are you talking about? I know the poem, and I don't think there's much information in it. And she said, well, I mean the metaphors and the similes and the symbols. And I said, you call all of that information? And she stopped a moment, thought, and said, yes. And it suddenly struck me about that time that I had been hearing the word information again and again used in various contexts in more and more ambitious and perhaps even global ways. And it struck me that information is becoming the God word of our time. And it should be pretty obvious why that's happening. It's because we live in an age when one of the most powerful elements in our culture is the invention of the computer, the research and development on the computer, and the computer is an information processing machine. And if you want to sell a lot of computers in a society, you have to convince people that information is terribly important and give it the most ambitious possible definition so that it covers more and more ground and becomes seemingly more and more vital. Now, it struck me that this sort of a development, especially in the field of education, dealing with, whether you're dealing with kids in kindergarten or students in the universities.
Applying the term information to the understanding of poetry.
There's a problem here, that certain distinctions are being obscured that are basic to any culture. And among them, there's the distinction between information and knowledge and judgment and wisdom. And it struck me that these are vital distinctions, that they have a kind of hierarchical arrangement, that some are more important than others, and that as a matter of fact, information is perhaps the least important of them all. And to let the word information simply spread until it covers all intellectual categories seemed to me potentially disastrous for a student's ability to think.
It would be implying, for example, as if you could take the music of Bach and do a mathematical analysis of the notes so that you would then understand Bach.
Yes, and you can do such an analysis. You can do a mathematical analysis of many things, and you may then understand it at a certain level, whatever the phenomenon might be. It struck me, as I thought more and more about this, that as a matter of fact, what's far more central to thinking, to what I call the art of thinking in my book, is the mastery of ideas. Cultures are based upon ideas. And if you think a moment, you may realize that many of the most important ideas around which our culture is based have no information in them whatsoever. They're not based on information. The ideas are of an entirely different intellectual character.
Metaphysical ideas.
Yeah, well, let me give you a very familiar idea that all of us recognize immediately, and we all recognize its importance. Take the idea, all men are created equal. That's an idea we inherit out of the 18th century. It's absolutely basic to our political life. It's the basis of our jurisprudence. It has launched revolutions throughout the world. It's a powerful idea. There's absolutely no information in that idea.
It would be hard to imagine a more powerful idea.
Right, and you can't imagine any body of fact that is related to that idea. So if you ask, what's that idea based upon? It's based upon something I would call experience, and especially moral vision. The idea was not created by people who had done research on the subject of human equality. The idea was based rather upon the moral insight of a generation that had come to find great sympathy for democratic politics, for the natural rights of man. These were the great objectives and goals of that generation. And out of that was born this powerful idea that all men are created equal. Well, the longer you think about it, the more you realize that what I call the master ideas of any culture have almost no relationship to information. The Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, right? There is but one God, and Allah is his prophet. On and on. The great religious ideas, the great theological ideas, the great moral ideas have no relationship to information whatsoever.
But science as a whole has never really pretended to offer moral or religious teachings, has it?
But even the great ideas of science usually start as visions, insights, theories, and once they become theories, they sometimes will help generate information. I think most scientists would now agree that you don't create great scientific ideas by putting pieces of information together the way computers put bits of information together. That there is initially some sort of a vision or an insight into the operations of nature. Out of this comes a theory. The theory then directs attention in such a way that it might help people find information that perhaps corroborates the idea. In other words, the relationship between ideas and information is exactly the opposite of what people in the computer sciences seem to believe. Namely, it is ideas that generate information. It is not information that generates ideas. And to lose track of that fact, it seemed to me, was to court disaster in our intellectual lives.
I wonder